that American education is subpar and that we are constantly dropping in worldwide rankings. We are below the worldwide average for developed nations in math and around average in science. Now let's focus in even a bit more. Among American states, Oklahoma is ranked at the bottom, ranging from 40th to 49th, depending on which study you look at. According to Education Week, Oklahoma's young adults were the least likely Americans to attempt any type of post-secondary degree. Our adult population has one of the lowest education levels in the nation, and we are at 47th in terms of per pupil spending. We hear these dire statistics all the time and are consistently told that we are not doing enough for our kids. Yet here you are, devoting your summer to improving education in your classrooms. Here you are, learning new ways to inspire and motivate young people. Does this sound like a group of people who have given up on education in their state? I think not. I haven't given up either. In fact, I am more motivated than I have ever been for education in our state. A little about me. After moving around for much of my childhood due to my father's training, living in Kansas, England, Chicago, Illinois, and Virginia, we finally settled here in Oklahoma as my father became a professor, researcher, and practicing physician right across the street here at the OU Health Sciences Center. This moving around was actually good for me, as it made me learn how to deal with meeting new people every single year and having to make new friends all the time. Regardless, my family was one who valued and loved science and math. Some of this passion may actually stem from my paternal grandfather. As a young man in what was once Czechoslovakia, my grandfather was schooled in chemical engineering and wrote an impactful graduate thesis that would resurface years later in the most unlikely of places. After the defeat of the Nazis in World War II and their ultimate replacement by the Soviets, my grandfather became an advocate for democracy and freedom for his people. He became a leader of the Czech underground and was put on the Soviet hit list. My grandfather and his fiancée had to escape, separated from one another, from the nation of their birth. They left their families behind, never seeing some of them again. Their parents and siblings were tortured, their lives so full of promise and hope following the end of World War II had come to a crashing end. They knew not where to turn or where to go. They were refugees and were being chased through every town and village of their homeland. After a breathtaking multi-year escape across Europe, my grandparents arrived in America. Because they had not been able to leave together, they actually didn't know whether the other one was even alive. Through relatives already in America, they eventually found one another again and moved to rural Massachusetts, where my grandmother was able to get a scholarship to Smith College. Because my grandfather's English was very, very poor, the only job he could get was working on a farm herding goats, as he had done as a boy in Czechoslovakia. But this wasn't enough for my inquisitive grandfather. He traveled into Boston and hung around Harvard Medical School, eavesdropping on conversations of the medical students about lab opportunities. There was one lady who ran a lab that was universally disliked by the students. My grandfather saw this as his opportunity. All he had to do was convince them that he was qualified. The lab recognized this and hired him on as a lab tech. Over time, my grandfather's abilities began to shine through, even though his English was still poor. He was known for drawing fantastic pictures to communicate to others as he continued to learn the language of his new country. One day, an MIT professor, originally from Germany, came to him and asked him, in German, to translate a thesis written in Czech. My grandfather immediately recognized the thesis as his own. The spectacular work done in the thesis was not lost on the MIT professor, and ultimately, my grandfather began his PhD thesis in MIT's Department of Metallurgy, receiving his Doctorate of Science in 1953. He completed his education and was a research chemist at Owens, Illinois, in Toledo, Ohio, eventually serving as the head of the New Products Division. By the end of his career, he had been a primary researcher, designer, and engineer on the re-entry shields for the Apollo missions, developed portions of the color television tube, worked on the design of the barcode system, and helped design unbreakable glass, to name but a few of the over 123 patents he received. Science and math were something I could never escape and never wanted to. From a grandfather who was an engineer, to parents that valued education above almost all else, to my 3 siblings who have all studied some field of science at Oklahoma State, Stanford, and Harvard. In fact, my sister is a child psychology researcher in the very same Harvard Medical Complex where my grandfather once did research on antibiotics. As you can see, science and math have driven me and led me to my undergraduate and graduate studies at MIT. I had always planned on somehow being involved in pure science and engineering, and thought that MIT would be the perfect thing for me. But, as sometimes happens, my plans changed. I felt a very strong urge to visit other parts of the world. What I started to tell myself was the, quote, real world. So I contacted MIT's admissions office weeks before the fall semester was to begin, and told them that I was honored to have been selected for MIT's class of 2009, but that I would have to defer my enrollment. Naturally, or not naturally, the admissions office said, please send us pictures. And in later years, they had me speak numerous times to incoming students on the benefits of taking gap years. Just to kind of say, MIT students, like OSSM students are pretty intense all the time, so taking gap years, taking a little bit of a break. Off I went to Morogoro, Tanzania, in Eastern Africa. I went to a language school to learn Swahili, and of course immersion is the best way to learn. I went to villages every single day that had incredible poverty, but were filled with people of overwhelming generosity. I volunteered at a local orphanage, helped to build churches, and served as a sort of translator/guide when foreign groups came to do medical missions. My next call to service was La Paz, Bolivia, located in the poorest country in South America. There I volunteered at orphanages in Bolivia's largest city, situated in the Andes Mountains at a changing elevation from about 10,000 feet to over 13,000 feet. What does that even mean? It means that the city has grown all over the cliffs around it, and that the giant Andes Mountains tower above the city. Kind of like Oklahoma City, right? In this urban area, the people face different and unique challenges compared to the people in rural Tanzania. After my year of volunteer work, I made my way to MIT. Was MIT a huge challenge, and does anything in high school prepare you for it? Absolutely not. But there I was, with a new worldview and countless opportunities ahead of me. MIT has many science and math requirements, regardless of major, but I ultimately settled on urban studies and planning. This field of study gave me the opportunity to delve into science fields like earth, atmospheric, and planetary science, while also applying this science to human beings. My time in the developing world was weighing on me, and my heart for service was growing ever more intense. It was then that I realized that a perfect blend of science and service was to become a teacher. After completing my master's and doing my teacher training through MIT and student teaching at Boston Latin and other Boston area schools, I followed my dream of becoming a teacher. I took a job at Mystic Valley Regional Charter School, the longest name for a school I've ever heard, but it's an inner city school devoted to mental discipline that had shown a lot of success. It was an incredible experience, but I knew that it was time to return home. After the many years away, having worked or lived on every inhabitable continent, worked in cities and states across the nation, and completed 2 degrees at MIT, I was ready to return to the place I was most passionate about, Oklahoma. Here I am now, a teacher at the wonderful Deer Creek Middle School in Northwest Oklahoma City. Excuse me, math teachers, but I always tell my students that science is the class that will get them a job someday. Being 8th graders, they basically respond with, "But I don't care about getting a job."
Right.
I then tell them that science is the class that will pay them the big bucks, which definitely raises some eyebrows. Now they're interested. I can't blame them. But then one of the brighter students will say, "Well, Mr. Francel, you do science every day, and you don't make any money." While I ultimately agree with my student, being a teacher is a call to service. This room is full of people dedicated to their profession, people who do not get paid for the impact that they have every single day. What are some of the impacts we have? Well, every future fireman, banker, inventor, and garbage man came through us in school. As teachers, we've impacted each and every person in this nation. Almost all of us have that one teacher, if not more, that impacted our life, that gave us new ideas on how to approach the world. That person that enabled us to see the world in a new light. That person that supported us even when we didn't do well. That person that pushed us to ever new heights. That person that inspired us to see the world. And that person that inspired us to become a teacher ourselves. See the impact we have? We're the ones who are there when that child finally breaks down in tears because their parents are getting divorced and they don't know who else to talk to. We are the ones who are there, still at the school, waiting for that parent to pick up their forgotten child at 7 p.m., knowing that they will never come, and that the police have to take that child home for the second time that week. We are the ones who have to stay strong every single day, even if our own life is crashing down upon us, to be there for the young people that count on us. We are the ones who have had that experience where we have to wait until we get to the parking lot late at night when it is dark outside before we finally let the tears flow. We are the ones whose hearts are hurting for that student of ours that has to care. All alone for 3 younger siblings, make them breakfast every morning, and get them to school all by 7:30 because their parents have worked back-to-back-to-back shifts or have been absent for 3 days. Whether we work in the richest or the poorest school, whether we work in a rural or an urban school, whether we work in a school devoted to excellence like OSSM, or a school just trying to keep its doors open, we all understand that it is us who change the lives of the young people in our state. With our guidance, there is no issue they can't overcome, no problem they can't solve. Because ultimately, that's what we're teaching, right? How to solve problems, how to approach the world logically, and how to creatively change the world around them. Of everything I learned at MIT, the most important thing I learned was how to think. I learned that our world is full of huge, formidable, seemingly unsolvable problems. But they aren't. Every single one of them is solvable. All you have to do is break the problem down into bite-sized pieces, design a logical plan of action, and attack. I fully believe that this is what we should be teaching our students in this state. We must teach them how to be problem solvers. No problem is too large to solve. They just need confidence to know that they can do it. One of the most interesting things to me about education is an obsession with job preparedness. Often this word is thrown around by government bureaucrats who are focused on education in terms of only future economic output and possible tax revenue. But as science and math teachers, we know better. What jobs are we preparing these children for? Do any of us know? I sure don't know what jobs will be around in even 10 years, much less 25. Is this a reason to panic or something to fear? Of course not. We just have to adjust as the human race to the fact that we have improved our lives so dramatically that we do not necessarily need people to do some of the jobs they did in the past. So if you're a math teacher, telling kids that math is important, how do we fight the fact that computers can solve complex equations many times faster than we can? As a science teacher, telling kids that science is important, how do we compete with the fact that technology is moving at such a breakneck pace that many of today's science jobs will no longer exist in the future? Here's my answer. We encourage, rather than squash, the child's natural tendency toward creativity. We encourage their desire to solve problems and fix things, rather than do it for them. We have standardized our children so much, demanding that they all be the same. But do we want automatons that all do the same things? We need to embrace each of their differences and encourage them to explore them. Only in this way will our children grow up to be adults with truly creative minds and a desire to solve problems and make their world a better place. Yet, how is this even possible with in a classroom with 30 students, which all of us probably have? I don't believe that it is with our current system. We have to embrace the fact that each of our students are so different and that we need to let them embrace their strengths. For example, this year I had a student who was constantly in trouble for behavior in all of his classes. We've all had this, or many of these students. He only came to school because he had to. His parents didn't care, and his teachers were sick of him. He seemed dumb, rude, and lazy. But then the day came that we found out that he was a great cook. We went to the restaurant that he worked at. I'm unsure whether that's actually legal for a 14-year-old, so I'm going to leave him anonymous. But, and sure enough, wow. Why is he languishing in the usual classroom? When he has already found a passion, something that he can use to bring happiness to so many other people. Or what about that student who loved science, yet completed her perfect lab notebook in less than a quarter of the time of her classmates? She loved the subject and tried to help her teammates, but at the end of the day, her work was perfect. She had helped 3 other students complete their work and was still done with plenty of time to spare. No matter what we say about challenging our best and brightest and how we applaud our attempts at differentiated instruction, why are they still languishing in these classrooms? We should embrace their brilliance and provide them avenues to embrace this on their own. I know that OSSM as a perfect example of this in our own state. But what about at the age of 5, when we notice that a student is capable of levels we can't even conceive? Our public schools then lose these students, or the students are eventually so frustrated that they literally give up. They don't care anymore, and we have essentially beaten the creativity and passion out of them. We need an educational system in this state that understands that every single student is completely unique and has different interests and passions. We can't standardize their learning. In fact, we must do the very opposite. We must embrace their individual nature and encourage them on their diverse and unique path. Today, I have had the honor of speaking to some of the greatest science and math teachers in our state. I don't mean to put too much pressure on you, but we're the future of this state. Students that we release into this state will determine whether we go on soaring to new heights in the years to come or crash ever further. Nothing fires me up more than hearing that American education is failing. Nothing inspires me more than hearing that Oklahoma education is one of the worst in the nation. Every single child that leaves my classroom doesn't need to be a scientist. But every single child that leaves my classroom should be able to approach the world with a creative mind and with a determination to solve the world's problems. Education is so important to me that I am running for the Oklahoma State Senate at this very moment. We must create a climate not based on fear, but hope. We must create a climate in this state that demands that no child will ever be left behind, but that also no child will ever be held back from their full potential, and that no child will ever have their passions quashed by an educational system that demands conformity rather than creativity. My prediction, Oklahoma will become a beacon for education worldwide within the next 10 years. Our teachers will be valued at a level worthy of their impact, and schools like OSSM and camps like this will thrive as we continue to demand higher and higher expectations of ourselves and those we are teaching. Many of us have given up lucrative jobs to serve our students. Many of us have given of our time every single day, arriving when it is dark and leaving when it is dark again. Those are kind of depressing days, actually. It's like dark and dark and but many of us have sat there as a child, bawled their eyes out. Many of us have made that call to law enforcement to request an inspection be done of a child's home environment because they came to school with bruises on their arms, and their eyes showed sadness and defeat. We are the last defense for many of our kids. To some of them, we are the best friend they will ever have. I don't tell them that I'm their friend, though. To some of them, we will inspire them for the rest of their life. Let us embrace the impact we can have as science and math teachers. It is up to us to make a difference. Thank you for your time today. I hope you have had a great week and have a great summer. Nice to meet all of you.